Hello, my name is Heather Miller. I'm an adult programming librarian with the La Crosse Public Library, and thank you for joining us for tonight's program, Blockchain 101, Cryptocurrencies and NFTs. I know we've been hearing a lot about the topic of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and the like in the media lately. It's quite a popular subject, however, it is quite confusing. So we're very pleased to be joined by Dr. Peter Harride from the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse to help us shed some light on this topic. Peter is a professor and the chair of the Information Systems Department, and his research interests include project management, financial technology, and the acceptance of emerging technologies such as cryptocurrency. So thank you so much for joining us, Peter.
All right, well, thank you for that. And yeah, this is kind of one of those topics that you keep turning the news on and you keep hearing about what is it, and it can be scary at times, but I think there's some opportunity, and it's got a lot of different opportunities. So the plan today, oops, let's see if I can move my screen. So the plan is, it might take about an hour, it might be a little bit less than that, but I'm hoping that you have plenty of questions at the end to ask, and I can be as helpful as I can be. So what we're going to do is introduce what this idea or technology is of blockchain, and that really leads us into what cryptocurrency is, which many of you have probably heard of Bitcoin, and we're going to talk about how blockchain enables that. Or we're going to talk about what NFTs are, and we're going to actually purchase an NFT at the end of the session and show you how you could actually do that. So to start with, you're all here because you want to hear about blockchain, you want to hear about cryptocurrency, we want to hear about Bitcoin. We've probably heard all the stories in the news of all these crypto millionaires and how they got there. And there's a fear of missing out because, what is this? Is this going to be the new money? How do I use cryptocurrency? Why are people using cryptocurrency? And then something that I think is interesting right now is the development of what we call NFTs. And this all is enabled through something called blockchain. Blockchain is not, I think it's not an easy topic to understand. There's a lot of technology behind it. So we're going to try to just get exposed to how this actually works. Just like anything, you don't have to be an expert in the technology behind it. We all drive cars, and many of us can't fix a car, but we know how to apply and use the vehicle. It's kind of the same idea with blockchain. We don't have to know the inner tech ins and outs, but we could use this technology to better our lives and take advantage of some of these different technologies. So first off, we got to think about, well, what the heck is this thing called blockchain, and what's it really trying to do? And really, what it is it's a record book. We are trying to keep track of any digital information. We're trying to keep it recorded in a safe way where people can't edit or change it. And that's the key word. We want to develop a way that is secure, where we can store this information online, make it publicly available, which is very unique to blockchain, where we'll talk about how everybody can see the transactions. It is public. And basically think of it as a running receipt for any transaction. Okay, so we're going to try to start thinking about what this blockchain is, and we're going to run through examples, and hopefully you can kind of get at least an understanding of what the heck this is by the end of our little chat here. I need to try to get rid of that's better. So blockchain, the kind of professor definition and what is out there, if you Google it, you'll see something called a shared immutable decentralized ledger. So think of this as a record book, if you're familiar with spreadsheets, people keeping track of all these different transactions. But what we can do now is we're going to share this record book with everybody in the world. They can see all the different transactions that have happened. It's immutable, meaning you basically can't change it. Once it's out on the internet, it is there. Once, I guess that's the wrong term. Once it's out on the blockchain, it is there for basically ever. We can't change it. And we'll see why that's important in a second. So what we can do is we can keep track of any asset. And this is where this idea of an NFT is going to come into play in a little bit. But we have all these different transactions that go on. It can be buying a house, it can be buying a car, cryptocurrency, cash transactions. These are all transactions that we need to keep track of. And blockchain allows us to do this in a slightly different way than what's been done in the past. Why people are interested in blockchain is it removes this idea of a third party needed for verifying the transactions. And we're going to see how this actually works in a second. So this is all the technology behind these terms you hear in the news of cryptocurrency and NFTs. So blockchain is basically the big record book that's keeping track of all these transactions. So when I give presentations, I like to mix in some videos. So I do have 2 videos. They're about 1 to 2 minutes long. And this guy on YouTube does a very good job of introducing what blockchain is. I think you have to see it in action to really start understanding what this could actually do and how we could use it. So we have about 2 minutes, but I think it's helpful to see this kind of in video form. So here we go. There.
Fun at parties, I promise. The reason that cryptocurrencies are called cryptocurrencies is because they're secured by cryptography. And one example of this, which a lot of the major cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin use, is blockchain. Now, people often get confused by this. Blockchain is not Bitcoin. Blockchain is not a currency itself. Blockchain is just a secure type of ledger. So you know that big spreadsheet that everyone has that's recording transactions? Blockchain is just a way of organizing it, funnily enough, into blocks. So every time I pay for something with Bitcoin, that transaction is recorded as a block. Each block contains transaction data, like who was paid and how much, the hash, which is a unique identifier, and the hash of the previous block in the sequence, or the last transaction that was recorded. And the pivot on which this system rests is that if something in a block is changed, then that block's hash will change. You might be starting to see where this is going. Because each block also contains the data of the previous block, if the hash of the block here changes, then the next block will no longer have a matching hash with it, and so every subsequent block after that one becomes invalid. So if you combine this with what we talked about earlier, this whole idea of a million different users all having their own copy of the blockchain ledger, then if I wanted to fraudulently create a transaction that, say, paid me money, I'd have to not just tamper with a block and every single block after it, but I'd also have to do this on at least 500,000 computers around the world, so that the majority of computers in the system are also consistent with the one I've tampered with. Probably not going to happen. Whereas just hacking into someone's dollar account and sending myself money, that does happen. And it's sometimes as simple as just literally guessing someone's 6-digit PIN. But there's a massive jump between that and trying to hack into 500,000 uncorrelated computers at once. Okay, so So
now if we take that idea where you have a transaction, this is submitted or sent out onto the blockchain. It's public, everybody has a copy of this ledger, so everybody can see the transactions. It's there as a way of, now if you want to change that, you basically can't do it without everybody else seeing what you're doing. So this is a different way of, in the past, everybody would want to keep their record books very private. You can only see your own transactions. The idea behind blockchain is we're going to open this up to everybody, and we're going to verify the transactions and link them together in a way where basically you can't change it without people knowing. So this is what a transaction would look like. Okay, so somebody's going to request a transaction. So this could be buying some item using Bitcoin. That transaction is sent out to all the different computers connected to the blockchain. All those nodes are going to verify the transaction. They're going to check it with their copy of the ledger and make sure everything seems legit and up and legal. And what's going to happen is that transaction is going to be verified. It's going to be put into a block and then connected to the existing blockchain. Okay. And then the transaction is completed. That transaction can be viewed by the public. It is public knowledge, and it's there to stay. So I'm not going to go deep into, how the blocks are linked together, but the idea is they are all connected one by one. So if you've ever played with Legos, you can think of putting that new block into the ledger. That ledger is going to continue to grow, but it's there for the public. Everybody has, all these nodes have their own copy. So if anybody tries any funny business, you're going to be able to detect that. So the key words are really this ledger. All these transactions are out on this shared ledger. Everybody has their own copy of the ledger. So if anybody, again, like we said, tries to change some things up, do some fraudulent transactions, somebody's going to catch that. And when I say somebody, the nodes, the computers that are processing the transactions on the blockchain. So what really makes this idea unique and growing in popularity is things are distributed. Everybody has the copy. It's immutable, meaning records cannot be deleted from the blockchain. If anything had to be changed, you'd have to do one transaction to change it, and then the next to actually put in the new data. Everything's time stamped, so you can track and trace it. It has to be unanimous, so when these computers are looking to verify the transaction, the majority rules, and the majority will determine if it's legal or not. Why some, and we'll talk about the anonymous aspect of blockchain in a little bit, but you can be somewhat anonymous, meaning it doesn't show your name that did the transaction. It's going to be something that's not as easily identifiable. Everything is secure. We're going to encrypt things. So when we say encrypt, it's going to be scrambling the message so nobody can see it that doesn't have the magic key, and we'll call that magic key a private key. And we'll talk about how these are programmable and allowing some different applications. So this leads us to cryptocurrency. Blockchain is basically what enables cryptocurrency. And when we say cryptocurrency, it's a virtual currency. And this is what takes some getting used to. We've grown up with cash, we've grown up with checks, we've grown up with credit cards. It always has that dollar behind it. And this is very different. Okay. Cryptocurrency basically has no intrinsic value. It is not linked to gold, it's not linked to a government. It is a digital form. It has no physical form. You can't walk into the store and buy an actual physical Bitcoin. These are all virtual. So everything is out on the blockchain, and it's not controlled by any government or any bank. There is a fixed amount of Bitcoin that will ever be created, and that number is 21 million, and that's created by the algorithm creating the Bitcoin. But basically there's a fixed supply, which is different than the US dollar, where we can keep printing money. So there's a fixed supply that leads us into how this is actually being seen as valuable. When we say cryptocurrency, the key word is, it's enabled by encryption. So if you've heard the term encryption, basically what we're trying to do is scramble up a message and configure it in a way where only you have the magic key to unlock it. So in this example, Hannah has a message that she wants to send. In order to scramble up that message, we have to have what we call a private key. You have two keys when you're operating on the internet. You have a public key and a private key. There's a mathematical relationship between the two. What I can do is I can put my public key out there for anybody to see. If they want to talk to me, they use my public key and scramble up the message and send it out to me on the internet. And I use my private key to unlock it. Anybody can have my public key. With that public key, they cannot go backwards and figure out my private key. So I can keep my stuff locked using my private key that nobody else can determine or get access to unless they somehow hack in and get my private key. So this is what cryptocurrency is. You own a certain amount of cryptocurrency that is going to be locked by you with your private key. So nobody else can open up that cryptocurrency because they don't have your private key. So this is one aspect of why people like cryptocurrency. Is in theory, it's going to be much more secure than some other, say, a cash transaction because of this use of the encryption. Cryptocurrencies do not rely on banks, so we can do a peer-to-peer system where we trust that the blockchain network is going to verify the payments and it's going to be secure. We actually can see who's sending what, and it's been verified by the nodes on the blockchain. So blockchain is really the technology that allows us to have cryptocurrencies. And Bitcoin is probably the most popular one. That came out in 2009. And I'm going to skip this slide for right now and go to this. So this is probably why most of us are here. We've heard cryptocurrency. We've heard of all these people getting maybe rich off cryptocurrencies. This is, I think I pulled this slide from yesterday's amount. So Bitcoin's a little over $43,000 per coin. Just to put this in perspective, if you would have bought a Bitcoin in 2011, the price was $1. The high in 2021 was $67,000 a Bitcoin. So just to make us all sad, if you put $100 in Bitcoin in February of 2011, you'd have $4.3 million off of that $100 investment. This looks very attractive. The challenge is it's very volatile. So this chart is just from the last year, and you can see that it's went from 43,000, it's went down to in the 20s, it's probably went up to about 60 again. So it's very volatile versus, say, a US dollar, if you're going to use that as your currency. It is growing, especially among the younger generations. We see less than 10% of the world population uses cryptocurrency. For Americans, it's about 1.4% of people at least own one cryptocurrency. So it's not at a high level of acceptance yet. There's an opportunity for it to grow, but we'll talk about what needs to be done in order for cryptocurrency to become as widely used as, say, the dollar. And probably the biggest things is there's not an ease of use yet. We've had presentations from some different cryptocurrency developers, and they're trying to figure out how to get people to trust the cryptocurrency, how to get an ease of use. It's just new to people, how to send money, how to think in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency versus the US dollar. So here's just a list of all the different, we can't list them all. There's over 4,000 cryptocurrencies out there, but these are some of the more popular ones that you've probably heard in the news: Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, Solana, Dogecoin. These are all, maybe some of the more popular ones, but this list changes daily. So this is an evolving topic, but that's why we're here, to hopefully just talk about it and see how this can fit into our plans. So another video to give you a break from hearing me talk, and I think we're about a little over halfway done already. So we'll have plenty of time for questions.
There'd be a more What is Bitcoin? There's a lot of confusion out there, but it's actually really simple. Bitcoin is just digital money on the internet. You can send it to anyone, anywhere in the world, and it's basically just a way to transfer value. So who invented Bitcoin? The answer is that nobody knows. In 2008, there was a computer science paper that was published under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto. And to date, nobody has figured out who this person or group of people are that wrote down this idea. But at its heart, it was fundamentally a breakthrough in computer science. It solved a problem that to date had not been solved, which was, how do you transfer value between two people on the internet without any trusted intermediary in the middle? And when they solved that, it had really wide-reaching implications for the world, because our financial system today is made up of intermediaries all over the world: banks, credit card companies, lending companies, governments. If the world had an open financial system where anybody could send payments between each other without trusted intermediaries, we'd have a world that was more free, had more innovation, more efficiency, and more quality of opportunity. Personally, I got really excited about Bitcoin because if the world had one universal currency that ran on the internet, I think it could really help people. There'd be a more global economy, and there'd be a level playing field for everyone around the world to access it.
All right, so that video is actually from Coinbase, and that's one of the companies we'll talk about. They're one of the leading exchanges for cryptocurrency. So why are people looking to get into Bitcoin? There's the idea that it's much more cost effective than dealing with a bank. Many people don't have bank accounts in the US and worldwide. This is a way to send international payments at a relatively cheap fees. There is something we call gas fees. So when you go to transact and send Bitcoin, you have to pay the nodes on the blockchain to actually process your transaction. And those fees can go up and down based on how congested the network is. So there is some fee to sending Bitcoin, but it tends to be less than what traditional banks and intermediaries charge us. It's efficient. It's available to anybody with an internet connection. It can be argued that it's relatively safe and secure. We can't reverse or we can't change transactions. We could reverse it, but if you try to reverse something, all the nodes are going to see what you're doing, and it could put up some red flags. And we showed that Bitcoin right now is 43,000 a coin. That isn't an amount that most of us have or want to put into a virtual currency. So you can buy smaller pieces, fractions of a Bitcoin. So if you want to purchase, say, a dinner with a Bitcoin, you can send, a fraction of an entire Bitcoin for that. Why it hasn't maybe taken off all over the place? It's very volatile. You saw the charts. It's very difficult to, say, walk in, and if you're, for the example, buying a car with a Bitcoin, one day it might be $43,000 worth of that Bitcoin. The next day it could be worth 30,000. You could lose 10, 20% in a day, and that happens with cryptocurrencies. So it's very hard to, put a value on it that is stable. It tends to react to news articles. If somebody comes out and, says, hey, especially we'll just go back to Tesla with Elon Musk. If he says Tesla's going to accept Bitcoins, the price goes way up. If the next day he says something negative about Bitcoin, the price goes way down. It's not widely usable yet. There are companies that are starting to accept it. If you play video games, Microsoft Xbox does allow you to pay with Bitcoin. You can buy a Tesla with a cryptocurrency. You can buy Starbucks with a cryptocurrency. So it's starting, bigger companies are starting to see that, this is a different way to connect with their users or consumers. And we're just at the early stages. There's concerns about, the safety. Safety is probably the wrong word. More criminal activity using Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. It is kind of the Wild West. There is few regulations out there from a government standpoint, but that's by design. It's designed to be open. There's lots of studies out there trying to see, is Bitcoin being used for criminal activity? And what the research shows us is cryptocurrencies are probably less likely to be used for criminal activity than cash. Cash is really very anonymous. You can't really track it at all. Whereas Bitcoin or a crypto, it's what we call pseudo-anonymous. We can still see who sent the money, when and where. There is a username attached to it, but people could, have fake usernames. So there is some possibility for Bitcoin supporting criminal activity. Got a cough. The other negative you've probably seen or heard in the news is Bitcoin takes a heck of a lot of electricity. You have all these computers throughout the world that's verifying these transactions. To verify a transaction, they have to go through a very complicated mathematical problem. Computers take a lot of energy, a lot of electricity. So there's some concern that, it's not good for the environment. And just to put that in perspective, all these Bitcoin farms around the world use as much electricity as the entire country of Switzerland for a year. So hopefully we're getting more efficient in the transactions, but right now it does take a lot of electricity and could be harming the environment that way. So we've talked about, is cryptocurrency safe? There is no, perfect answer. It could be. I would like to argue that it is more safe just because when you have a transaction, it is public. In order for a hacker to be able to take control or do some fraudulent activity, they would have to get control of over half of the nodes on the blockchain, which really isn't, in my opinion, possible. Transactions are irreversible. When you do a Bitcoin transaction or a crypto transaction, you do have a username and password. We'll talk about how we do that in a second. And then there could be a special code sent to you via text to verify that it's you. Some people like that it's not backed by a government or it doesn't have government regulations. This can also be viewed as a negative. It's very volatile because of that. And users don't have as much protection as traditional financial products. So there is some dangers that are out there. But over time, hopefully we can improve upon these. So now I want to talk a little bit about how you would actually use a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency. If you're thinking about getting into cryptocurrency, I think the first question you should really ask yourself is, are you looking to use this as a form of currency where you actually want to buy or sell items for Bitcoin? Or are you looking at it more from a investment standpoint, okay, where you really don't have any plans to go out and buy a coffee with a Bitcoin, but you want to diversify your investments and take advantage of this new investing domain. So once you decide, how you want to get into the crypto game, you could go with a traditional stockbroker. A lot of these brokers now are offering mutual funds or ETFs that give you exposure to different cryptocurrencies. In that design, you're not actually owning any Bitcoin per se. When I say owning a Bitcoin, it means you can't transfer to a wallet and use that to pay. There are plenty of finance apps out there, Block, PayPal, Venmo, that you might be familiar with, where now you can buy a Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency, and we can put it into a wallet and actually spend it if we wish. Okay, so these wallets are basically storing your private key. So when you create an account, the account gives you a public key and a private key. That private key you need to keep secure. You can't let anybody know your private key, because that's how you unlock your transactions. You show that you have ownership to that transaction that's on the blockchain, showing how much cryptocurrency you own. So there's two ways to store your private keys. And this is if you're trying to, down the road, you want to actually have the ability to spend a Bitcoin. You have what you call a hot wallet, which is more of a software wallet. And that's the picture up in the right-hand corner, the top right-hand corner. This is an example of Coinbase, which is one of the more popular crypto exchanges out there. And that software wallet is going to allow you to have your public key, where you could publish that out to the world, and they could use that to send you cryptocurrency. And that software wallet is going to have your private key stored, where only you can unlock and see the cryptocurrency that you own. The other idea, or the other option, is something called a cold wallet or a hardware wallet. So this is where you take your Bitcoin. So your Bitcoin is basically that private key, and you store that on what we call, it looks like a little USB drive. So you would plug that into your computer, download your transactions, and you store it on that little USB drive, and that's what's in the lower right-hand corner. So some people like to, disconnect from the internet, have your Bitcoin on your own device, whereas others allow it to be stored in the software version. So you can use whatever, approach you want. They all work. It's just like choosing a browser. If you use Google Chrome, if you use Firefox, they do the same thing. It's just your personal preference. So if you were going to, I didn't come into this presentation to say, you should buy Bitcoin or this is what you should do. I'm not a financial advisor, so I can't give you that advice. We can talk about the pluses and minuses, and that's kind of what we're doing. And we can show you the different ways to actually purchase Bitcoin. So if you were going to buy Bitcoin, the first thing I would do is research the exchanges, talk to people, which is difficult to do in a new technology. There's not many people out there that are using Bitcoin, especially around this area. So do your research. I would say stay with the big players. So when I say big players, Coinbase is probably one of the easiest platforms to get, I think, to use. If you're using PayPal, that's an easy one to get exposed to or to start using too. But especially Coinbase, I'm not plugging Coinbase, but I think it's easy for newbies to get involved with. Decide how you want to store your digital currency. Do you want to keep it in a digital wallet, or do you want to use one of the more hardware options? Whenever you talk investments, it's good to diversify. So don't put all your money into Bitcoin. If you want to get into cryptocurrency, buy some Bitcoin, buy some Ethereum, buy some Dogecoin, because we know these things are going to be volatile. Some are going to go up, way up. Some are going to go way down and maybe not even exist 6 months down the road. Okay, so just be careful that way. And figure out which platform is best for you. Okay, there's all kinds of different options out there, but I think the big advice is talk to people. Coming to something like this is great, and get to know people and ask questions. I think I did miss a slide. So here's how you would send cryptocurrency. This is taken from a Coinbase wallet, and basically all you need to receive Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency is that QR code, or you could have the actual Bitcoin address, which is my public key that I would post out there and say, if you want to send me money, here's my Bitcoin address. People can scan the QR code, or you could enter that address into your wallet, and you could actually transfer the funds virtually. Okay, so this is, if you wanted to scan to make a payment, or these software wallets will actually have it built into your browser where you can transfer the funds. And we'll show that maybe when we get into this NFT thing. So this is a little hard without having kind of a interaction. But what we're looking at here is what we call an NFT. For most of us, we look at this and we see a picture, a digital picture from a website. And the question is, what is this worth? And I think if I showed this to most people, they would say it's worth nothing. Okay, it's just a digital image. I wouldn't pay anything for this. I could go out on the internet and right-click and copy and have my own copy of this picture. But if I open this up, I'm hoping it looks like my screen shared correctly. This is worth $96,000 out on the blockchain. This is an NFT. So now we got to figure out, well, why would somebody pay $96,000 for this image video of LeBron James, which is kind of crazy in a sense, but we're going to see why people are putting value on this. So let's go back to the presentation. And it went all the way there. That's not good. So we skip fast. All right. So here we go. NFTs are an application of blockchain, and it's basically trying to give ownership to digital assets. So some of these numbers are hopefully shocking to you, but this picture in the top right-hand corner, this is a piece of art created by an artist called Beeple, sold for $69 million. This little avatar in the lower right-hand corner is something called a CryptoPunk. That picture, that image, sold for close to $12 million in June of 2021. And then we saw the example of the LeBron James slam dunk. There's another option out, or another moment out there, we call them, the NFT, sold for close to $400,000. And these are basically digital images. So why are people spending millions of dollars on something we all could just right click and copy? Okay, so the definition of an NFT is something called a non-fungible token. And to understand what the difference between fungible and non-fungible is, fungible can be swapped out for another item without a gain or loss. So the good example of a fungible asset is a $1 bill. I could have 5 $1 bills in my wallet. They are all worth the same. There's nothing different between those 5 $1 bills. Something that is non-fungible is unique and differentiated. And what they're trying to do with these NFTs, or what they are doing, is these digital images have a unique identifier. So think of a serial number. And we're going to use the blockchain, which is that open record book, to show ownership of who owns what NFT, what serial number, and create a market for it. So these are collectibles. For one example of NFTs, they're collectibles. So the idea is we're going to use the blockchain to be able to create, sell, authenticate, and exchange digital images. We're going to represent ownership. So now you can say, I own this digital image. And this is very different to what we're used to on the internet. Typically on the internet, you did not have scarcity. Everybody could copy and paste whatever they see on the internet. The idea now is we're going to transfer ownership to digital assets. And people, as we see, are paying millions of dollars for these items. So I've got just a couple examples, and then really it's going to be time for us to chat. So when we say digital images, one of the bigger marketplaces out there is a site called OpenSea. And this is a place for artists to upload their artwork and sell this to those that are interested. And there's millions and millions of digital pieces of art that artists have put up for sale. And why this is unique for the digital artist now is they can receive money for selling their images. The blockchain allows them to put into what we call it smart contracts. So there's some code behind the scenes that whenever somebody buys or sells that digital item, the original artist can get a percentage, so a royalty. And it's all built into the code utilizing the blockchain. So if you want to go out to OpenSea sometime and just see all these different pieces of art, we could go to that marketplace. Another application of blockchain is for tracking the food supply. Okay, so IBM is utilizing the blockchain to really make sure that we know where our food is coming from. And whenever we have those food recalls, if that data was out on the blockchain where we could track and trace, this example is showing the pig all the way to the consumer. If something happened along the way, we'd be able to easily go back and identify what happened. And Walmart's using this. They talked about how there was a recall on mangoes, and they could use the blockchain because it's a public infrastructure, it's a public record book, and go back and trace where exactly that crate of mangoes was that was getting people sick. So the blockchain is not just for cryptocurrency, it's not just for art, it's not just for food. There's all kinds of different applications, and we don't have time to think about all the different areas it could impact. I'll go back to the Top Shot. Well, this is NBA Top Shot. This is kind of, if you think of it, it's basically baseball cards, sporting cards in a digital world. So if you're a Milwaukee Bucks fan, this is Giannis, and we can see what his NFT, this particular NFT, is sold for. So it looks like somebody spent $750 for it. Somebody else has bought for $699. Each one has a unique serial number. So there's where we get scarcity. So maybe there's only 700 of these in the entire world. And then people place different values on, well, the first serial number is worth more versus the others. And what's interesting is this is a good example of seeing the blockchain in action, how everything is public. This is all the transactions that have occurred on this NFT for Giannis. We can see who the buyer was, who the seller was, what they bought it for, and then it's time stamped with the time. And this is all public data. Anybody can download this. There's people that, you know, analyze this, look for different ways to make, you know, investments based on what is selling, when, and to who. So just to show you how easy it'd be to purchase an NFT, I could go to my Top Shot account. And if we open this up, we can search for any NBA player that's out there. So we could say Steph Curry. It will bring up all the different options of his NFTs that are out there. So you can see some are selling for $82. This one has 8,539.
We're not able to see your screen, Peter.
Not able to see my screen. That's not good.
We can still see the PowerPoint, just not the tab you opened.
Okay. Let me, I don't know if it's that, oh, I just stopped everything. Let's do this. Go back. All right, so I am right now in, can you see my screen now?
Yes, thanks.
All right. So this is the NBA Top Shot with all these different NFTs. You could search for your favorite player. So we could say Steph Curry. They've got all these different NFTs for Steph Curry. You can see some are for $82. If we scroll down, there's ones that are going for hundreds of dollars. If we keep going, there's $2,000. And basically what people are buying is a picture or a video of a particular moment that happened in a basketball game. So we could say, hey, I really like this moment. It brings up select and buy since I'm already logged in. You would select the moment that you want. So some people value different serial numbers a little bit differently. So maybe 4,000 is for some reason worth more than 27,000. You would say buy that. And what it's going to do, we talked about wallets earlier. So this is basically a software wallet that is, I won't actually log in, but it would place that moment, that NFT, into my software wallet, and I would own it. Okay, so what do I actually own? I own a digital picture that can be used for different, many people are using it to try to use it as an investment. Okay, it's just like sports collectibles, thinking that this was going to be worth something. So a little bit of a crazy idea, but what screen can you see now?
Still your browser screen.
All right, let's change that up. We're on to the last slide for those that are counting. All right, I will stop sharing that. We go back, trick it back to the end. All right. So I try to keep it hopefully somewhat short, not super technical. Talk about some of the different options that are out there. Why blockchain is kind of it is the technology behind when you hear cryptocurrency, when you hear an NFT. The question is this really going to be the new money? Are we all going to be spending cryptocurrencies in the future? I would probably predict not tomorrow, not 5 years from now, maybe 10, 20 years, maybe, who knows, maybe 10 years. This will become more commonplace and you can go to the grocery store and pay with your Bitcoin. But it's new, it's something that hopefully you found of interest, and I got plenty of time for questions. If you don't have a question now, you can always shoot me an email and I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Go ahead, Kay. Please feel free to answer or ask your question.
I was just wondering, I appreciate this, but it's still just clear as mud to me. But, not too long ago, like banks were sort of bundling mortgages and making all these products, and I had a couple friends that are now retired who were bank examiners, federal bank examiners, and they would say things like, oh, they're so smart, those bankers. Oh, that's just amazing, how they have all these products that are making so much money. And then it turns out that basically they were just criminals taking advantage of poor people. And there just seems to be some similarities in my perspective. And I'm just a very basic person who's barely able to use the computer, period, let alone manage my own money. So, I mean, it seems somewhat criminal to just make up, money for things that are on the internet. That
is a good question. So in theory, the reason Bitcoin was even developed was people were not happy with how banks charge fees. The transaction fees, in their opinion, was outrageous.
I agree.
So the idea is now, if I can send you a currency and not involve the bank, because this is what it's really designed to be, is the public blockchain network is going to say, yes, you have these funds, you can transfer it to this person. Now, when you say it's made up money, you're not wrong. It is made up money. That one slide that said there's 4,000 of these different cryptocurrencies, they're not all of those are going to survive. Those are the Dogecoin one. If you've read anything about that is the programmer made that up as a joke. And he just wanted to see if people would actually buy it, and people have bought into it and are using it. Just like all these digital currencies, there's nothing, the only reason it has value is somebody else believes it has value.
Well, which is also true of money. But I mean, my kids got these things from their aunts and uncles at Christmas, and it seemed sort of like a little Ponzi scheme. I'm sure they got something in return. So they were giving the kids cryptocurrency, and they're adults, but young adults. And, and then I said, well, don't do anything with that because you have to pay taxes on it. You have to pay
that. Yes. So I think the early adopters, so if this has been around since 2009, those early people probably were not reporting taxes. Now, if you buy cryptocurrency from, say, Coinbase, from PayPal, you are reported, so you are paying taxes on that. So
it really complicates your tax return now.
It does. It does. Yes.
Well, I don't know what the kids ended up doing, but that was my recommendation anyway. So I just think, it's all crazier. It's crazier and crazier every day.
It is crazy. I mean, there's nothing, the only reason it has value, the Bitcoin is a little bit different because there is a fixed amount that can ever exist.
Well, so I like
that. You can place some value that, there's never going to be, nobody's going to create more Bitcoin and flood the market. This is the amount that will ever exist.
So if I wanted to cash in my $10,000 in Bitcoin,
yep,
I do that. I could just only get Bitcoin credit in a Bitcoin purse, right?
If you already own the Bitcoin, you can convert that to US dollars. You can sell the Bitcoin. If you are buying Bitcoin, say from a broker like Robinhood, they sell Bitcoin. If you go out to the market and sell it just like a stock, you'll get US dollars.
Oh. And it's at the exchange rate that it would be listed now.
Yeah, so The Bitcoin is basically listed as a price just like a stock is. So like today, one Bitcoin is $43,000. So if you owned one Bitcoin and said, I want to sell, your one Bitcoin would be worth 43,000 US dollars.
So I think it would be a good idea to turn that into a bar of gold. Personally.
Well, that's what this generation is thinking, that Bitcoin is digital gold.
But yeah, I'd rather have real gold.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, that's all the questions. I'm still confused, but thank you.
No, we're all confused. This is not an easy topic.
Thanks, Kay. Sue, feel free to ask your question next.
Okay, I am also confused. I'm just curious. This is, I think, a fairly short question, but I have another longer one. You said that with Bitcoin, there would only be 21 million Bitcoins. Does each of the other, like you mentioned, Ethereum and Litecoin and so on, do they each have a limit as well?
No. That's what makes Bitcoin a little bit more unique. Now, the supply is controlled, but in the future, there could be additional, Ethereum created, but Bitcoin is fixed in the amount.
Okay. Can I ask a couple more questions?
Sure.
So on NFTs, let's
Yep.
say that I buy a piece of art, a digital rendering of a painting, let's say. So what does that actually mean? If I see that I'm looking at a magazine and I see that that piece of art has been used in an ad in a magazine, do I really own it, or am I the only one who owns it?
It depends on what you actually bought. So there are some NFTs that it is a one of one and you own the copyright and you can do whatever you want with it. And if somebody uses that digital image, they should be compensating you. Other NFTs, they'll say it's a limited edition of 100. So you own one of 100 NFTs of that piece of art, but that contract might not say you own the original. So it gets tricky.
Okay. And if you could go back to the mining thing.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't touch on mining because that's even more complicated.
Yeah, so I was just reading something about that and about how much energy it took up. And is all of that computer operation that's using up all this energy, is that just keeping track of all the cryptocurrency transactions?
Nope, it's doing both. So what I mostly mentioned was the transactions. The mining, that's how we get a new Bitcoin is created. So what happens is that's why it's compared to gold, where you're mining for a Bitcoin. You have to solve these crazy complicated mathematical problems, which use up a lot of energy. And it's becoming whoever wrote this program, over time, it becomes even more difficult to mine a Bitcoin or create the Bitcoin. So it's using even more energy.
So who are these people that are creating these mathematical problems?
It's built into the code for Bitcoin. So nobody's writing code to, create the Bitcoin. The Bitcoin, that's why I didn't touch on mining too much, is you have these supercomputers that are trying to solve these problems, these mathematical these mathematical problems. to create the Bitcoin. It's all built into the code, which is built for computer scientists, which I am not a computer scientist.
Well, okay, so there's a building someplace that has a supercomputer in it, right?
Sure.
I mean, more than one, obviously.
Sure.
But so who owns that building? Who pays the rent? Who hires the people who run the computers and pays
there are
them?
public companies that are Bitcoin mining companies. You'll see a lot of them are housed in China because of electricity prices and other issues. Back in the early days, somebody could basically put 5, 10 servers in their basement and have them run constantly and trying to generate Bitcoins.
Okay.
But that's not as common anymore, just because it's you need to have a heck of a lot of computing power, and it's basically corporations now are, big companies are mining the Bitcoin.
Okay, I guess that's all my questions. I'm still pretty confused.
Yeah.
But I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you very much.
And I just popped a link in the chat box. We have plenty of library resources if you'd like to continue your educational journey on NFTs, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and blockchain technology. So feel free to take a look at our catalog and see what we have, as it is a very complicated and complex new technology. But thank you, Peter, so much for explaining it to us and allowing us to dip our toes in understanding this new trend. So thank you so much for sharing your time and information with us.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.